Welcome back to On Texas Football's Tuesday night Longhorn Livestream presented by Andy Ludicky. I'm your host, Amanda Atwell, joined, of course, by the pros CJ Vogel and Jeff Howe in much better spirits this week than last week. I'm sure most Texas fans are. Some big news coming out today. We'll get to that. But how are y'all feeling after Texas OU? I hope a little reinvigorated in the spirits of how the direction this season is going.
Yeah, I think obviously you win in Dallas, you come back with the golden hat. You feel good. Now, does that mean all the problems are solved? Probably not. And Jeff, I think we're going to talk about that a little bit this evening. But it's hard to feel like you did against Florida when you just whooped up on Oklahoma. And for what is the corrected amount of years, 3 out of 4, Texas has now held Oklahoma out of the end zone. And that is something that you can certainly celebrate.
It can be a nice little run here. First off, I can guarantee you I'm doing better than Brent Venables is right now. So I can guarantee you that. But you can beat Oklahoma, you can beat a member of the Stoops family, and you can beat a member of the Briles family all in consecutive weeks. So it could be a nice little run for the Longhorns here. Nice little enjoyable run for the fan base.
Yeah, Brent Venables catching some shade from the Big 12 conference as well as losing to his arch rival in the same week. Never easy, but we got a lot to get to. Pop any super chats, pop any questions in the chat. Super chats jump to the top of the list, of course. Starting out, some big news out of transfer portal news, mid-season transfer portal news that we didn't think we would get. Jared Gibson and Will Stone out of the program, headed to the transfer portal. What do we think about this? I think especially with the Jared Gibson news and the depth of this running back room, some concern there. Do you guys have concern there, or do you think he just wasn't going to be a piece of this puzzle moving forward in this season?
I think you had your answer, right? Against Ohio State, Florida, and Oklahoma, you had 1 total rush attempts from Jared Gibson. I think that is the staff telling you what the answer was going to be. And it is unfortunate because Jared Gibson, a guy that came in from IMG, showed some signs of being a guy this team could use a year ago as a true freshman. Obviously, depth allowed him to get on the field early this year. Texas with the full stable of guys, even with some nicks and bruises to Trey Wisner and CJ Baxter, it didn't feel like he was going to be a guy that contributed fully. He had his opportunities in those 3 cupcake games, and I thought he played well. Sam Houston State, I think he showed well. But with what Texas wants to do with the outside zone running scheme, that doesn't fit what he is necessarily, his strength right now. I think he's a gap runner. I think he's a power guy. It was pretty telling once again when Sark said, we didn't have really any short distance opportunities for Jarek against Florida. And then to see, Texas to have, first and goal from the 4-yard line and he's nowhere to be seen, that kind of tells you where I think the pecking order fell. But all in all, a guy that commits and signs with Texas, to see them leave in the middle of the season, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's once Trey Wisner's back healthy, he's obviously your bell cow running back. He's earned that right based on his track record. Once CJ Baxter comes back, Gibson has even less of a role. And quite frankly, for being honest, he's been passed by James Simon. So it's not, yes, because of the red shirt rules in the portal, he can, get out now and start looking at what his options are. But whether he left or just did not play the rest of the year, the writing has been on the wall, I think, for a minute now that Jared Gibson, in terms of his long-term future for his football career, wasn't going to be at Texas. It's unfortunate, but, CJ, I do, Sark did mention that the Monday after Florida that they wanted to get Gibson some carries but didn't. There weren't that many short yardage options. Quite frankly, I think at this point for this team, as crazy as it sounds, Arch Manning's probably a better option in the short yardage run game than Jared Gibson is.
That's probably true.
At least you're not as predictable. I think that was kind of Jared Gibson's downfall. Well, really, 2 is when he's in the game, it's pretty predictable what you're going to do. And 2, that's a position where if you struggle to hold on to the football, you're not going to get very many opportunities.
Yeah, 100%. And, again, it is unfortunate. Fumbles were something that I think really prevented him from taking the next leap in the Texas running game. And obviously James Simon coming along, the return of Christian Clark. And, this room right now with CJ Baxter and his return still up in the air a little bit. Trey Wisner now seeing, about 90% of the carries from Florida to Oklahoma combined. you're going to need to find a guy that can steal some work off the plate of Trey Wisner. Do you have that right now? It will fall on the hands right now of Christian Clark and James Simon, as I mentioned. But I do also want to report that, hey, Texas is also looking at another option at the running back room right now. Michael Terry has gotten some burn in practice as of late, dating back to about Thursday of last week at the running back position. Again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's going to be seeing carries in the immediate future. We know how Texas likes to work their young freshmen in at different positions, but this was an option, or at least a talking point when Terry was signed. And right now it feels as though Texas is ready to branch out some new avenues for Michael Terry and how they could use him moving forward.
What I hope that is, CJ, is I hope that's kind of what we talked about in the offseason with him, is let him be a receiver long enough to where he can, get down some basics. He can at least function at the position, and then move him to running back. And now once he gets that down, now you can go into 2026, really looking to weaponize him now that he understands how to play two different positions.
I liked this question. I don't get Will Stone leaving right now. What do you guys think about this? Obviously, kicker Mason Shipley's secured the starting job, but why would he leave right now midseason, just announce his departure right now midseason versus waiting it out?
I think it's just as simple as preserving a red shirt to go be a kicker number one somewhere else. Obviously, that was not going to be the case here at Texas, and he had kind of been relegated to just holding on to kickoff duties. And, I'm not sure why Texas had two scholarship kickers, but, that's kind of how things fell.
And then on the subject, Scott with a super chat here, odds Baxter is back in 26. I mean, I would think, considering he hasn't gotten much play time thus far, is he an NFL prospect quite yet? I don't think so. I think he would need a little bit more experience before he departs.
I mean, if it's back at Texas in 26, if the option is Texas over the NFL, it's Texas. He just got to stay healthy. You can't help the club if you're in the tub. So, he just needs to be on the field. They need to get him right. It's when you're talking about a hamstring injury, I've said it before, I'll say it again, man. And Amanda, this as a former high level athlete, those soft tissue injuries, if you mistime it and you have a setback, like, you're all the way back to square one. So getting him right is paramount right now.
Can you say that again, Jeff? I like that.
Can't help the club if you're in the tub.
I like that one. That's a winner.
There's our new saying about injuries on this team. Is there any update on him? Is there hope that he could be back for Kentucky, or is it further out?
Yeah, of course, we'll see tomorrow night around this time when the injury report is revealed. But the expectation and the hope, at least, is soon. Is that this week? Is that next week? Texas looking to get him back on the field soon, and I do think you'll see him back before Texas returns home against Vanderbilt.
I came into the week cautiously optimistic, Amanda, if that means anything, which everyone can take that for whatever that's worth. So,
well, it's better than what we were after the Florida game. At least what CJ was after the Florida game, which didn't seem to be very optimistic at all. A little bit of a low blow here from Sugarcane Daddy. Jeff, how's it feel being the old man on the live?
Great question.
Look, I stopped trying to be cool a long time ago. And I'll tell you the moment
up with the new saying. He's perfectly cool.
I'll tell you the moment it hit me too, if we're being 100% honest. This was, my daughter was probably 2 at the time, 2 or 3. And I'm driving my wife's car. I'm in Austin going to an appointment, and I've got the Tupac playing. I'm jamming, and then I'm at the light, and I realize, like, there's a car seat in the back, and I'm in my wife's car, and it's got the mom stickers in the back windshield. And I told myself out loud, I'm like, it's over, man. Just wave the white flag. You're done. You're not cool. Any chance you had of being cool is over. So yeah, Sugarcane Daddy, I accepted my fate a long time ago as being the not cool member of this staff.
That's okay. We'll keep you young as best we can. All right, a couple more questions about running back before we move on. Baxter's out and Wisner is injured going into Kentucky. Who plays at running back?
Wisner. Wisner plays.
As far as I know, Wisner's not injured, right?
22 carries, 92 yards. That's the guy that Texas very clearly wants to lean on right now. He's obviously got the most experience of this bunch. And as we've talked about, he fits that outside zone running scheme the best. And that's another thing, Jeff, and I want to get your thoughts on this. When Texas gets going with that running game and that outside zone, getting that offensive line moving left or right laterally, I kind of worry a little when Wisner's not on the field. Is there enough that you've seen that allows them to still have that outside zone threat, knowing that's something that Trey Wisner specializes and majors in? Do you feel like what you've seen from the other backs so far, that is still going to be, kind of the MO with this Texas offense?
I think it has to be because, honestly, at this point, this offensive line seems like it blocks zone runs better than it blocks gap power runs. I don't – the math ain't mathing in my head. Like, you think, okay, inexperienced offensive line, they should be like, it takes you a while to be a good zone blocking offensive line, but it just is what it is. So that's always going to be a part of who they are. But if we're doing hypotheticals, which you guys know, like Steve Sarkeesian loves hypotheticals. So this is in honor of how much Sark loves hypotheticals. In Lexington on Saturday, if Trey Wisner, and I'll borrow the old Tom Herman line, if he breaks a shoelace and has to come out of the game and CJ Baxter's not available, your number 2 run threat at this point is Arch Manning. Like, we can talk about the backs all we want, but your number 2 run threat at that point, your biggest run threat becomes Arch. So I think at that point, CJ, you probably just shift gears a little bit and be like, okay, probably lean on the court. Like, that was the beauty of Trey Wisner's game and that 29-yard run by Arch late in the game is they didn't have to rely on Arch as a runner. They didn't need design run. So that way, when you do call them, they're that much more effective. So you probably just lean on Arch a little bit more. But, it goes back to when we talk about Gibson and basically all the backs outside of Wisner and Baxter, whenever he's healthy and back in the mix. I feel like James Simon has shown me more as a runner in limited action than Christian Clark and Jarrett Gibson have. And that's not a knock on those two guys. That just like James Simon, I like his forward body lean. Coach Shipley used the term, he's a pile mover, and he is. Like, you see the pile moving forward when he runs. I think, the times he was on the field against OU, you could tell. And I don't care where you are as a freshman, that game does move fast. Even like John Mateer being in that game for the first time trying to knock rust off, like, it was moving a little fast for him because there were just decisions he made that he normally wouldn't make. So it was moving a little fast, but I like the idea of, if Baxter's out, I like the idea of James Simon being the number 2 back because you can use he's a really good zone runner. He's got the tools to be a zone runner. But again, with those guys, Gibson was the one guy that it was really predictable what you were going to do when he was in the game. You got a little more diversity, a little more margin for error with Wisner and Simon. CJ, I have no idea if that answered the question, but I get it.
No, I'm with you. I do think Simon, it comes a little bit more naturally to have that one cut and get the field ability, and that's something that we've seen with Wisner. The patience and the vision is always on display, it feels like, whenever he's able to get loose. And that 37-yard run, I don't think it highlights his ability as the most of any run that we've seen this year to be patient, get to the second level. He actually bounced off one of his own blockers in the second level, got free, and Jordan Washington had a tremendous block on a safety that allowed him to cut back a little bit and go get loose upfield. My big question, we talk about predictability of this running back room right now. Who's going to be your piece to pass block? Who can sit in there and take on a blitzing linebacker, chip on an edge? I don't think there's a running back right now that can. I think Wisner is your most capable, but that's because he's been around for 3 years. We haven't seen it from Christian Clark. James Simon, again, sparing, he hasn't had a whole lot of opportunities. And we know that Jarrett Gibson, that was not a strength of his by any stretch of the imagination. So as we move forward and we look for ways that Texas can peel back bits and pieces of the onion to show more of its offense, pass protection from the running back room is going to have to be a piece that we see more of. And right now, I don't think that there's a whole lot that you can write back at with that in that room.
Speaking of pass pro, I was watching the Bills-Falcons game last night. Dude, like, Bijan's special, right? Like, we know that, right? We watched him for 3 years. He does things that, like, I haven't seen any other backs do. And as good as he was last night with the ball in his hands, there was a point in pass pro where he, like, got up under Ed Oliver's chin and, like, knocked Ed Oliver on his back. I'm like, dude, that is that is like an all-pro level defensive tackle that you just obliterated like in the A-gap in pass pro. So shout out to Bijan for the big game last night on Monday Night Football.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll talk a little bit more about that Texas OU game after we hear from our partners over at myperfectfranchise.net. Are you looking to diversify or new ways to make money? Andy Ludicky at myperfectfranchise.net can help you do just that by finding you businesses that will fit your time allotment and financial goals. Call him or email him to learn more. He's got a really cool process that identifies a perfect fit for you. Email him now at Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. And before we get into talking about Texas OU, yes, my voice is hoarse because I was screaming at the Texas OU game. There was a lot to yell about. There was a lot of OU sucks to be yelled. So I did my part. I played my part. But talking about Texas OU recap, obviously a lot of improvement, but obviously things that still need work heading into the rest of the season. So first, why don't we start off the good? Why don't we start off with some of these improvements we saw? Especially, I think the biggest concern going into this game was the O-line and just the protection Arch got. The 35 presses he got against Florida, not good. A little bit better this game, still room for improvement.
Yeah, for me, the biggest takeaway of this game offensively was Steve Sarkisian adapting. You know, it was not sit in the pocket, try to huck it deep and hit a home run on every play. No, in fact, Texas did kind of the opposite. They kind of looked like Ichiro, Jeff. They were saying, hey, we're just going to hit singles, steal a base or two in the run game. And, you know, if we score, we score. If we don't, we're going to kick a field goal and try to add up points that way. And they did a great job, right? I thought that was a great adjustment versus what we had seen against Florida. And I think coming into the game, Sark knew we're not going to have the luxury for these longer developing plays. They didn't get under center all too often. As we talked about, I think the longest pass attempt of the day was actually by air yardage, the touchdown to DeAndre Moore. You know, it was pretty interesting that they were very short. And obviously you got to work on the screen game. You know, there are a lot of lost yardage plays in which Texas was tackled behind the line of scrimmage there on quick screens or whatnot. But altogether, I thought it was a great job by Sark not putting and hanging his offensive line out to dry against a very good front seven. And as a result, Texas was able to move the chains very efficiently in that second half when they really stayed ahead on script. And that was really, for me, my biggest takeaway was the adaptation of the head coach.
You'll never go broke taking the profit, and that's what the Texas offense pretty much was against OU. It is, to your point, CJ, it's nice to see Sark adapt because I think this is one hole that Sark kind of fell into. Like we saw Sark do this early with Quinn, and I think he did it early with Arch too, is you get so consumed, so obsessed, so enamored with the deep ball and the availability now to have shot plays. I think at this point, it's like, okay, if the shot play is not there, let's not force it. Take a page out of Billy Napier's playbook from when you play Florida. Let's get our quarterback into a rhythm. Let's get him some confidence, because as his confidence grows, now he's able to make that play coming off the goal line where he has to get out of pressure and throw that ball to Parker Livingston on a dime going into the sideline. Like it's just these small incremental gains. It's not sexy. It's not going to be on the highlight tape, but that's the kind of stuff that leads you to those big plays later in the game. So don't force the issue with the deep ball. And like Brent Venables' defense by design, it doesn't want to give you the deep ball. Just take what they give you. And I really, really like what they did. I do. As we're talking about the OU game, though, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. I just want to, if I can dump on OU while Texas is in the midst of a run in this series, I will do it, because I lived through the 5-game losing streak. The first game I ever covered as a media member was 2012, 63-21. I even forget what the final score was. It was brutal, and watching Bob Stoops laugh while Mac Brown's calling a timeout in the last 10 seconds is just like an image I can't get out of it. Matthew, can you put that tweet up on the screen? Because this is some work from John Hoover, who's covered Oklahoma for a long time. Just looking at how dominant Texas has been in this series. Basically, I believe it's anytime one of the two schools has won at least 2 out of 3 times, or I think it's 3 times in 4 years. Texas has the second largest cumulative margin of victory in these last 3 wins. It's the second highest ever. The only other time was 2000 or 2003, and we all remember that. Like, I've still got PTSD from those losses. So this is a historic run in this series Texas is on. Now, I do hope it goes beyond 2025, but right now, man, this is a pretty dang good run of dominance. And if you want to know why that Oklahoma fan base is not very happy with Brent Venables right now, that 9 cumulative Texas outscoring OU 106-9. I think that pretty much says it all.
Oof. I tell you what, you talk about that run continuing in 2026. I have no reason to think it won't, given the fact Texas and the defensive line, and even when we're considering this offensive line being a major work in progress, they did a very fine job of pushing piles when needed. And it was the second year in a row that Brent Venables got on the mic after the game and said, we got pushed back in areas that we couldn't afford to be pushed back. The line of scrimmage was lost. And the word that he used in 2024 was we got dominated up front. Texas finding ways, even in which it's been a work in progress so far, to dominate the line of scrimmage against Oklahoma is something that they have been able to do year in and year out over the last few years. And that's something that over the last 15, Jeff, they haven't had any room for argument on.
I got to ask you, CJ, you got to see your favorite player play. You got to see John Mateer play. Has your opinion on him changed at all after seeing him play against Texas? And obviously, was his thumb 100%? We will probably never know. I find it hard to believe that it was, but he said it was. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he said it was. So take his word for it. But no, I still think he's a talented player. Texas had him in a box. The pressure off the edge, it was never ending. Obviously, he had some terrible decisions, and Texas took great advantage of. I have to also put a lot of that blame on Brent Venables. We've talked about it. That was some of the worst coaching clock management-wise that I've seen from an SEC coach in quite a while, right before halftime. I watched it back. I was trying to describe it to a buddy that didn't watch the game, and I was like, just sit down, let me pull up my phone, let me show you what was going on. And the fact that, they ran the little screenplay to get to 3rd and 2 or whatever with about 45 seconds left, and then they substituted on. What did you think was going to happen with a running clock and substitutions coming on? They're not idiots on this side of the sideline. Oklahoma would do the exact same thing. I thought that was some of the worst clock management that we've seen in quite a while. And frankly, that was a kind of a force of Mateer's hand to throw the ball down the field. And it was a bad throw. It was a bad decision. Mateer didn't play great. I actually thought some of the things that Oklahoma did its best on was getting him into space and running some of that read option out there, get him out on the edge. But no, that was a bad game from John Mateer. Texas bottled him up very, very handily. Yeah,
I also point out too, and the reason why I like bringing up that John Hoover tweet that we showed, somebody mentioned it. Somebody mentioned it in the game thread over on TexasFootball.com. Late in the game, like, man, is this what it felt like on the OU side when Bob Stoops was handing Mac his head? And I'm like, probably, because I consumed various OU videos, podcasts, some written content, and one of the prevailing themes was they feel like Brent Venables missed a golden opportunity to get a win over Texas when you're probably going to face, quote unquote, maybe potentially the worst Texas team you're going to see maybe for a while because of Arch's growth, the way Texas is recruited, the way Sark has shown he can develop, what Texas can do in the portal, the resources Texas has. You don't know when you're going to get another chance like this to really compete with Texas. So I'm with CJ. Like Oklahoma's at a point where it's hard to see Texas being significantly worse. And now it's okay. Can you get to the point where you're significantly better to where maybe you can get a touchdown in one of these games?
Yeah. And to add to that, look, that was a game Oklahoma had to win. We've talked about their schedule quite a bit. They'll whine and complain about their schedule quite a bit as well. With the way that their schedule shakes out, you're sitting there at 5-1. You feel good through the first half. They're on, I see 4, maybe 5 losses. That is a tough schedule. And why would I believe that they're going to be able to play complementary football offensively when they were in the same boat Texas was in with its running game against Florida, right? That's how their running game has gone the entire year. So, yes, you're going to have Mateer put on the cape and be Superman every single week. And for a guy that's already nicked up, that's pretty darn impossible against an Ole Miss, a Tennessee. Shoot, South Carolina's down this year, but that's still a tough team. So, no, I think Texas with that win in Dallas essentially just knocked them out of playoff contention.
Hard to win on the road in this league, and as I said, you should never apologize for winning a road game in the SEC conference. I see two for OU. I see two for sure losses. They're not beating Tennessee and Knoxville. They're not beating Alabama and Tuscaloosa. Like, it's just not going to happen. I do think they're a better team than South Carolina, but they've got. If you say, okay, I'll give them one win, I'll give them two losses. To me, there's three toss-up games right there. Yeah. And the three home games: Ole Miss, Missouri, and LSU. I could see any combination of, with those three toss-ups, I can see any combination of win 3, go 2-1, go 1-2, lose all 3. I mean, it's all on the table because, CJ, maybe Ole Miss got that typical Lane Kiffin clunker out of their system with a field goal win over Washington State at home. Maybe that was just the one, because CJ, I'll give you credit, man. You're like, dude, until Ole Miss proves that they're just not going to have one inexplicable loss, then Lane Kiffin's going to have one inexplicable loss at some point. And then, man, I watched last night before the Monday night games. I watched was watching the replay of the Missouri Alabama. Some of what I missed, like Missouri's a pretty good team. Like they're kind of out of sight, out of mind for me, but that's not a bad football team. And then, man, who the hell knows what you're going to get from LSU one week to the next? At least LSU's kind of a little bit better version of Oklahoma. I trust Garrett Nussmeier a lot more than I trust John Mateer and trust the pieces LSU has on offense more than I trust Oklahoma's pieces. But that could, CJ, very well be another rock fight where it's like, man, if 14 points would probably be enough to win that game for one of those sides.
I was going to say LSU OU is the Spider-Man pointing meme. They're the same thing.
Yeah. And the thing is with this as well is if it's a 5-loss season for OU, say they lose 4 of those games, does Brent Venables is he on the hot seat? Is he here next year? I feel like that's a valid question.
Look, it's interesting. I was talking to a couple Florida reporters at halftime of that game in the Swamp, and it's like if Napier were to win this game, that's great. Now, if he were to lose it, but it'd be close, maybe you get a breath, right? You allow him to keep the job and move forward. But if he loses a game in which he blows a 16-point lead in the fourth quarter, I think that also is room for yanking his seat out from under him. And I think the same goes for Brent Venables. You start 5-0, you're ranked top 10, you walk into Dallas, you lose that game. Okay, but you got some leeway now, right? You've built up a 5-0 record, wins over Auburn, Michigan, whatever. But if you back into the season just start rattling off loss after loss after loss and the locker room quits on you, then I think it's very much the same situation where the administration sits around and says, well, we're in the same boat that we've been in for 4 years now. Why would we think it's going to improve any forward, especially in the back half of the season? We were supposed to be grinding out wins to get to Atlanta or to get to the CFP. I think absolutely it's on the table.
Yeah, and this kind of goes to the James Franklin situation at Penn State a little bit. And, Texas, not so much Charlie Strong, because once Charlie had that loss.
That for you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. As the official James Franklin truther of the OTF staff, I'm doing all right. I was texting with somebody on Sunday when it happened. They're like, you jumped off that bandwagon, right? I was like, I removed myself from the wreckage after the UCLA loss and limped away. That's where I was on the James Franklin bandwagon. But you look at James Franklin and him and Penn State parting ways. To CJ's point, it's like you can look at the track record, well, you're firing a coach that did this, and this. But if you're the administration, and more importantly now, the people that are putting up the money for your NIL funds that are basically funding your salary cap and funding your program, you've made the decision that, look, it's peaked. It's not going to get beyond here. Like getting to the CFP semifinals was probably as far as James Franklin was going to take Penn State. So why not just rip off the Band-Aid? And whether it's Marcus Freeman or Matt Rule, whoever your number one candidate is, go ahead and just rip off the Band-Aid now and start getting your ducks in a row to go make that run whenever the regular season's over or whenever you can go get a head coach. And the fact that Penn State's open, Jerry and I talked about it on the recruiting breakdown today. Like if you're Michigan, if you end up 6-6 or with a losing record, like knowing Penn State's open, do you pull the trigger with Sharon Moore thinking we're not going to lose out on a really good candidate to Penn State by hanging out one more year with Sharon Moore to see if it's going to work? So it's those kinds of decisions that and like we saw it with Tom Herman at Texas, and like you could look at it and say, well, Tom won 32 games in 4 years and 4 bowl games, and it wasn't a terrible tenure, but it wasn't great. But the powers that be had decided Tom Herman's only going to, it's a hard ceiling with Tom Herman leading your program.
Yeah.
And if that hard ceiling is not where your standard is, then rip the Band-Aid off, get rid of that staff, and go find the guy you think can get you there.
Yeah. On top of that, look, we'll see what happens with Jaden Ott, because I think some whispers are getting pretty loud in terms of how long he sticks around in Norman too. Is
he hurt or just not being used?
Hey, we talk about kind of, groaning a little bit when you hear about having to earn your stripes in practice. You hear the Oklahoma staff talk about what Jaden Ott has to do to get on the field. It's only practice. And it's like, this guy just ran for 1,400 yards 2 years ago at Cal. Give him the rock.
And if he's healthy, like your run game sucks, dude. Like, and that was the thing. Like listening to some of the OU reporters after the game, they're like, the running back rotation makes no sense. Torrey Blaylock's a young guy, and maybe he gets there. He's just not quite where you need him right now. A lot of those guys didn't understand why Xavier Robinson was playing, and then there's Jay Knott. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's not a very good return on your investment, CJ, for the guy who was probably the number 1 running back in the spring portal window.
It's about $36,000 a touch right there for Jaden Knott. I think he's doing okay.
Well, some of your offensive linemen don't block either. So, at some point, like you can either do what you've always done and get what you've always got, or you can try something different.
We'll talk a little bit more about what Texas has coming up next week with Kentucky. But, Jeff, first, can you tell us a little bit about Duck Camp?
I sure can, Amanda. Duck Camp makes gear for folks who live for being out there, whether that's in a duck blind at sunrise or on the 40 acres for a Saturday kickoff. Born right here in Austin, Duck Camp builds best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel that works just as well for a full day in the field as it does for a long day of tailgating, from sun protection shirts to keep you cool during those early season scorchers to their iconic game series hats that feel like instant classics. Duck Camp gear is ready for football season, hunting season, and every season in between. Get out there, stay out there, and hook them. Shop Duck Camp at duckcamp.com. And on Texas football listeners, use the promo code ONTexas25 to get a discount on your next purchase at duckcamp.com.
Got a question from Hookem here. Is there anything about Kentucky that could give us problems? I think there's something about most teams in the SEC that could give you problems, especially when it's a road game at night. And Sark actually mentioned this in his press conference. He was getting a little flack for it, basically calling this an SEC championship game for us. But I think, it's kind of the mindset you have to have going into these things if we want to play that clip from Sark from the press conference.
Very good position. As I said, we're 1-1 in conference play, and moving on and moving forward, this is an SEC championship game for us. You guys are seeing the records in our conference, and there's a lot that's going to happen, and a lot of people are going to eat each other here as we go, and we got to control our own business. But I think we're learning our team and our style of play and how we can play moving forward. And so a lot of positives there that we can build on, and some things that we need to improve upon for sure. We're not a finished product.
Yeah, I can understand why people would say, "Oh, Kentucky's your SEC championship," but at the same time, you saw last season there were a couple teams that were held out of probably college football playoff bids because of losses to teams like Kentucky in the SEC. Losses.
To your point, Amanda, Ole Miss missed out on the playoff because they lost to Kentucky at home.
Alabama skunked by OU.
Yeah, so it's basically, if fan base, look, there's a lot of stuff Sark said this year that you can get onto him for that, legitimately you can have a gripe with. This isn't one of them. Basically, it's saying look, this is an elimination game.
Yep.
Because the thought process should be, CJ, man, if you lose at Kentucky, that's probably not going to be your last loss in conference. Right. So you just need to go take care of your business. So you look at to get to Atlanta, this is an elimination game if you were to lose it. That's basically how I'm taking that.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoy hearing that sense of urgency from Steve Sarkisian, and I kind of wish they said that the minute SEC play started with the loss already in your hands, that was also an SEC elimination game, going to the Swamp and playing against Oklahoma. But they've arrived to that point now where there is no margin for error. So moving forward, you have to treat every game as such. And Jeff, to your point, if Texas has to go out there and play, 6 straight elimination games to get to where they need to go, well, good. That's what this team should be feeling. They should be feeling that heat. They should be feeling the quick starts, everything that we've talked about that hasn't necessarily shown up through the first half of the season. That needs to change moving forward. And going on the road, I saw a question earlier. I forgot who it was, so excuse me. But what can Kentucky do that can give Texas some problems? Well, the fact of the matter is you're playing a night game on the road in the SEC. It's not what they can do. It's what the crowd, what the atmosphere, what the environment can pose as a challenge to the Texas Longhorns. And look, we haven't seen Arch win a true road game so far. What can that offensive line look like to provide for him to get over that hump? That's the problem. That's the challenge for me, is winning on the road.
And this is not Mark Stoops' best, most talented Kentucky team. Like, he's had some really good teams there. But to CJ's point, like, what can Kentucky do? They got if you're not on your P's and Q's, fitting the run right and being physical up front, they've got the potential to control the clock with their run game, because their run game is not terrible. It's probably at this point, because I don't know where their quarterback situation is right now with Cutter Boley, but it's the strength of their team right now is their run game. They've kind of got the big humans philosophy too. Kentucky's really big up front, and the Seth McGowan, who I still don't know how he has eligibility left, is their leading rusher. I really thought, man, did Seth McGowan really play with Malik Jefferson at Mesquite T? Like, I made that joke the other day, CJ, and I'm like, damn, I'm gonna check. Like, no, they were a few years removed from each other.
You want to? Sorry to cut you off. I saw Seth McGowan in high school, Jeff.
Yeah,
and he was playing against Jatavian Sanders and Drew Sanders, their senior year at Denton Ryan, and it was a very young Anthony Hill on the other side. What a battle that was, and it's crazy to think a senior Seth McGowan versus a sophomore Anthony Hill, and I guess it was a junior Drew Sanders at the time who ended up at Alabama and then Arkansas. That's crazy to think he's still running around. And to your point, Kentucky's had some really solid running backs in the past. Ray Davis, Chris Rodriguez, Benny Snell, former Steeler. Seth McGowan's talented. He's not one of those guys. And that running game isn't as formidable as when it was with those trio of backs at Kentucky. So we'll see. But altogether, you're right. It feels strange that he's still around.
Yeah. I will say, too, to your point about the crowd noise, one thing that I've looked at, and I'm hoping to have this ready to go up on TexasFootball.com tomorrow. But, Sark talked about, again on Monday about starting slow. How the offense starts drives makes all the difference in the world, because you look at those first 3 drives they had against OU. This offense, especially against the better defenses in this league, you're still not at the point where you can overcome big negative plays, pre-snap penalties, even like holds, stuff that really gets you behind the chains. You're just not at the point where you can overcome that. Winning on first down is imperative. Giving yourself manageable third downs is imperative in this game, because you want to take the crowd out of that's what they didn't do. CJ, you were there in Gainesville. That's what they didn't do. The crowd never had a reason to be out of that game.
Yeah.
If you take the crowd out early, don't give them any hope. That's the best way to win a game like this, is just to come out, start fast, step on their throat, have them behind the 8 ball. Because the quicker you do that, the carrot, the dangling out in front of this team, if you can start fast, now you've turned it into a game where the opponent's got to throw the football. And as we saw on Saturday against Texas, if you got to throw the football and PK knows you have to throw it, you're cooked at that point.
We'll talk a little bit more about what's to come this weekend after we hear from our friends over at Advanced Pain Care.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
Now, talking about what Texas needs to do to win this game, got a super chat from Billy Woods. Great win against Oklahoma. Hook 'em. When are we going to rush Simmons, Spence, and Hill together consistently? Your thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't know if you want to do it consistently, because that's something that I think you can just break it out at times. Like when you want to do that, it's going to be predictable passing downs. You got to earn the right to get to that point.
Yeah, and the problem with putting Spence and Simmons on the field together is if those are both of your edges, while you're dealing with two guys at about 6'2", 6'2.5", 240 pounds, you're losing about 30 pounds with Ethan Burke not on the field. You're losing about 5 inches of height with Zeno Umeozulu being another. So you're sacrificing a lot of size, and in the run game specifically against a team like Kentucky that wants to pound and ground, that could be a difference between a tackle for a 1 or 2 yard gain and maybe them reaching the second level and getting to the 8, 9, 10 yard gain. So I think it's interesting, but what I was really encouraged by, and Jeff, I'm sure you saw it in the rewatch as well, the movement of Spence playing over the nose at times, Colin Simmons being used as a guy, as a stand-up backer, blitzing up the A and B gap. It's not just, hey, line up on each edge and blitz up front, right? No, that they're getting creative, and that's something with all of these pieces I find to be very encouraging for what might come against Georgia or an A&M later this year.
Yeah, it's on Ant Hill specifically. I love, and Marcus, thanks for the chat. Marcus Myers dropping in with, they've been mugging Ant a lot and dropping him into coverage, which has been weird. And I agree. I had to talk with one of my best friends who's an OU fan. He's like, man, why is Texas doing that with Anthony Hill? Like, wouldn't they weaponize him a little bit more? I'm like, yeah, it frustrates me because I live by that old Will Muschamp line of thinking. Like, you don't train a thoroughbred to run backwards. Anthony Hill's a much better football player when he's moving toward the football. He impacts the game much more when he's going toward the football. As a matter of fact, there was a point in the game on Saturday, and I had somebody mad at me during the watch with us because I was complaining about it. I'm like, yes, you can drop him every now and then, but like, I want him going toward the ball. Later, the next play, he comes running downhill and gets a tackle right around the line of scrimmage. I'm like, oh, imagine that. Good things happen when Ant Hill is going toward the line of scrimmage. So that is one thing I would like to see them do more in the back half of the season, is weaponize Ant Hill a little bit more. I know you got a lot of guys that you can tinker with and put in places to be successful, but man, you've got one of the truly special defenders in college football with Ant Hill. I just want to see them weaponize him a little bit more.
Yeah, 6 games in, no sacks.
And from what y'all saw during the OU game, and just with how different the OU and Kentucky offenses work, obviously Kentucky relies a lot more on the run game than OU has. OU's run game has been non-existent this season so far. What would you say that Texas should adjust as far as going into this game schematically on defense, especially to just kind of avoid that was one of my biggest red flags from Florida was what happened to this defense. I mean, this offense was never going to be one game scoring 35, 40 points. You had to be able to get to 20 and hope your defense holds. So how does that change going into this game?
I hope they're quick to move to a 3-down defensive lineman look. I did not think that they were quick to doing that against Florida, in which maybe they probably should have started the game in that look, right? Make DJ Lagway beat you because he hadn't beat anybody all year. And if he wants to sit back and throw against that pass rush, hey, good luck to you. And I do think that is the recipe again to beat Kentucky. Now, Texas will probably come out in its base look, right, with 2 big defensive linemen, Cole Brevard probably. I think you'll see Hero Kanu or Alex January. And that's okay. But if Kentucky starts having success, look, Cutter Boley is the guy that you're facing. Force him to throw the football. Force him to sit back there, feel the heat of Colin Simmons or Brad Spence or whoever it is, a Lance Jackson even, and throw into this secondary. Because, look, he had to do it a year ago. He had some success, Jeff, but he's not going to have success doing that for 60 minutes. So take away the run by any means necessary and allow your strength, that pass rush, and those weapons up front in that front 7 to pin their ears back and get active.
And you've got to trust, part of that is trusting your DBs in man coverage. That's probably playing more middle field post safety, more single high safety, trusting guys on the perimeter, especially now that Malik Muhammad's back with Manny back. Yeah, you can trust him to lock up, whether it's Kendrick Law or whoever, like lock up somebody one-on-one, playing a little tighter man coverage. Yeah, I mean, if Cutter, look, I always make the opponent take the take away the path of least resistance. Like, I don't want them to establish a ton. If Cutter Boley beats you because he just had like a out of his mind kind of day where he throws for like 300 yards and is almost perfect, then so be it. You just got beat by a dude having a career day throwing the football that you didn't expect. But, to lose the Florida game the way they lost it, where Florida just kind of lined up and just really just pounded the rock the entire first half, that's the game, and I can't have that happen. So take away their strength, try to make them play left-handed. And I'm with you, CJ. I like that 3 down front where you're playing a little more tight front and just kind of muck things up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We got a super chat from Matt. Jeff, when the younger guys play, Smith, Jackson, Littleton, Simon, good things seem to happen. Why do you think Sark is being stubborn with the young wide receivers?
Well, I think part of it is, okay, if you're going to take those guys out, like, who are you taking off the field to put on? Number one. Number two, with the OU game specifically, if a guy hasn't played a ton, that's probably not a really good game for him to get his first significant action. I mean, look, we've seen freshmen have big games there, but I wouldn't just tell Khalil Lockett, hey, you haven't played hardly at all this year. We're going to give you 20 snaps against Oklahoma. And wish you the best of luck. Like, typically things don't work out that way. So that would be the thing for me, CJ, is if you're going to put some of those young receivers out there, who are you taking off? And based on who you take off, like, what does that mix look like now? Because I would assume you got to, no matter what, DeAndre Moore's probably got to factor into that mix you've got on the field because, the relationship he's got with Arch. He's, I think, the best in the scramble drill. He's your most experienced guy. But then I don't really want to take away reps from Parker Livingston right now. And Ryan Wingo does things physically that those guys don't do. So it's just a matter of there's no good options on who to pull off if you want to put one of those young receivers on the field.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And Emmett Mosley coming back, he has proven that he can be a 600-yard guy at the college level before. He's a guy that Texas trusts when healthy. On top of that, Jeff, you mentioned playing in an environment like that. Rapport is so important. Scramble drill is becoming such a big piece of this Texas offense.
Huge. That's
not successful without 5 previous games to get to that point, right? So if you throw in a freshman, does the third down to Livingston, the third down to Moore, the third down to Wingo, does that convert in the same success? If it's not those guys on the field, my argument is probably no. So you got to lean with the guys that for a sure fact will be in the right position at the right time, and I've done it before.
It would be different, too, if one of those proven guys at this point was not making plays. But I thought the wide receiver group specifically, now, like, we did our grades for Sunday, and we grouped them with the tight ends, and, I don't, the tight ends are kind of were what they were in the OU game, but I thought the receiver group had a really good game against Oklahoma.
Yep.
We'll hear a little bit more about what we have coming up this weekend, as well as getting your questions. Super chats, once again, jump to the top of our list. But first, let's hear from our friends at Mark Saunders. When it comes to protecting all your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? Here's some good news. Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders, serving the Austin and Round Rock area and all of Texas, is the only insurance agent you need. Everything from your home, car, and boat to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Call Texas All-State agent Mark Saunders' office today at 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands? With more than 35 years of experience, you will be with Texas alum Mark Saunders. If you're looking for someone local to the Austin, Round Rock area and all of Texas, give him a call at 512-218-8571. Got a question here from Hefty Taco. Should the question of Sark getting an OC still be asked? I mean, he scored 13 points on offense against OU. Offense averaged 20 versus teams, less than 20 versus teams with a pulse.
You can ask it, but I mean, I don't know how many different ways I can say it. Like, they'll have to like threaten to put Sark's face next to like a buzzsaw or something to get him to give up play calling. Like, he's not going to do it right now. So I don't foresee him doing it. So to me, I mean, I'm not trying to discard the question, but like, for me personally, there's no point in going down that road. Do I think he should? Yeah, I 100% think he should consider it, but me thinking he should consider it and him doing it, it's two different things.
Yeah, I'm with you.
CJ, we got a question for you. Have you been on your movie game?
No.
And have you seen any of, I guess, Kentucky alums Ashley Judd's movies? She's been in some good ones. I'm watching while eating birthday cake.
Who is Ashley Judd?
Judd. Did I say that wrong? I have no idea.
What
did I tell you all this story? I'm bad with actors. Like this is not sports come naturally. You see a number, you see a name, you see a jersey. I instantly know where they went to school, what their big games are, statistics, whatever. I was sitting on the couch the other day watching a movie with one of my buddies, and some old guy was on the screen, and I couldn't tell you the movie, but I'm sitting there and I just go, "Hey man, that guy just made me laugh. That was pretty funny." And I turn around and I go, "Dude, who is this guy? This guy rocks! Like, what an actor!" And my buddy gave me the most confused look I've ever seen from him, and he said, "You mean Al Pacino? Al Pacino rocks, you think?" I go, "Oh shoot, that's who that is." So to give you an idea of where I stand with actors, actresses, thanks. And what's funny is my brother is the complete opposite with sports. He's the movie guy. He knows everything. Who's in what their genre of taste is. Have no idea. So I'll get on my movie game at some point.
By the way, thank you to Mama Vogel for putting up there A Time to Kill. Hellaciously underrated movie. It's Ashley Judd, McConaughey, Samuel L. Jackson, great movie.
Amanda, you got the same look I do.
I am not a movie person. I mean, my boyfriend has tried really hard to make me a movie person. I had not watched a single Marvel movie before I met him. I have now watched them all. So
yeah, there you go.
We've at least caught up in some categories, but I gotta say I might be worse than you, CJ. I mean, there's certain actors I'll recognize. Glenn Powell, I'll recognize every time.
Yeah, so. Longhorn fan.
There was a Longhorn Blitz podcast intro back in the day where we took a part from A Time to Kill, like when we intro Rod as and Rod Babers, and it was Samuel L. Jackson going, "Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell." If you hear that line, that's Samuel L. Jackson from A Time to Kill.
Gotcha. That would just straight over the head. Anyways, we can get back to football for a little bit.
Thank you. See, Marcus has my back.
We got a little bit more time here. Now, one question about a team that is looking rather good that we have coming up this season. Should we be concerned how quickly Elko has been able to turn their program around, or is it just a matter of Texas getting their offensive line solidified?
What month are we in?
It's not yet fall off the rail month, so TBD, but I've been watching more A&M than I ever have in my life because of this. It's great fun. Because of this podcast, I decided to start. But they do have some weapons on offense. They do have some weapons. I had questions about their run defense at the beginning of the season because they got gashed by some of those, I think UTSA early in the season, one of their running backs. But Casey Concepcion is a problem. And so is, I believe it's Marcel Craver, also a problem on offense. Mario Craver. And I mean, Marcel Reed's been having a very good season. So if you've watched a little bit of A&M recently, I also think their wins are higher quality than what OU's wins are proving to be at this point. Notre Dame versus Auburn and Michigan, who is now unranked. So I don't know. They have some tests coming up. Obviously, they have to go on the road to Texas. Obviously, they have to go on the road to LSU, which who knows what that will look like, but it's in Death Valley. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
I can recognize the improvements I've seen A&M make while still recognizing the truth that they haven't played a conference road game yet. Yeah, they get all the credit in the world for going to South Bend, beating Notre Dame. Not taking that away from them at all. But they haven't played, I think them and Ole Miss are the two SEC teams that have yet to play a conference road game. And look at the back half of that schedule. And I'm telling you, they have not earned the benefit of the doubt from me or anybody on them finishing strong because they never do. So until they show me otherwise, if they come into Austin for that last game of the regular season undefeated or a one-loss team, then we'll talk about A&M. But until then, it's the same deal I said with OU, CJ. Like that 2-game stretch where they're at LSU and at Missouri, I can see them winning both those games. I can see a split. I can see them losing both those games.
Yeah, my thing with A&M is, Mario Craver, Casey Concepcion, unbelievable. As dynamic a wide receiver duo you'll find in the entire country. Problem is, you sit back and make Marcel Reed throw the football, it's a 50-50 jump shot. You don't know if the ball is going to get where it needs to go in a timely manner. I don't think A&M has a great quarterback. It feels like very much like Texas. Each game kind of presents a new issue, right? The Florida game, you scored 34, but it wasn't a pretty 34, right? You only had your leading rusher was Ruben Owens, I think about 50 yards, a lot of short fields. It was a 7-point game at half or late in the fourth quarter. And the reason that really blew up is because Florida failed on 2 consecutive fourth downs. So, they've taken care of success, or they've handled their business so far. But you go back and you watch a few of their games, and again, you're a PAT away from potentially losing the Notre Dame game. Auburn couldn't move the football in the 3 of us and 8 guys in the chat. And what's going to be interesting, pull that back up, Matthew. This Arkansas game on the road, Arkansas is going to get up for that game, especially after showing some life in Knoxville against Tennessee. I think Arkansas is buying back into the Petrino coaching idea, and he is certainly coaching for that job. To lose by 3 on the road to Knoxville after being absolutely embarrassed by Notre Dame just 2 weeks previously, they're going to get up for A&M. So we'll see what kind of test the Piggies provide to A&M. But Marcel Reed just zero fear in my eyes at all.
This is significant as well. Le'Veon Moss is out, which is their number 1 running back, and he's just been plagued with injury issues. He was injured last year as well, so struggling with staying healthy in the running back room as well.
Yeah. What a time to be alive when Bobby Petrino could come full circle and end up being the permanent head coach at Arkansas again. Like I love how some of these schools just have no shame and they'll bring back Bob Petrino. But I'll back up, CJ. I'll back you up on this. This is the kind of game that A&M historically has lost. Like they're undefeated. Like, oh man, you're just playing Arkansas. They got an interim head coach. Yeah, you can go to Fayetteville and win the game. This is the kind of game where they would stub their toes. So
I gotta say, Billy's worried about it. On our show, Billy was stressed. He was a little stressed about it, and I was like, I mean, that's a game you should win. So I don't know what to tell you.
Battered Aggie syndrome should be hitting that fan base over the head like with a sledgehammer this week. Like
SEC shorts, Battered Aggie came back in SEC shorts. So
it's just and for very good reason. So like. I'm not saying like I'm going to think A&M is going to win the SEC if they win this week, but they will show me something that they're getting somewhere as a program if they go to Fayetteville and handle their business.
We will see. All right, we're going to hear from our partner one more time, Andy Ludicky, stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks of PTO and no control over the money you make or your schedule in general. Call Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. He will take you through a process to identify a business that will not only fit your financial goals, but also your skill set. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Good question here from Victor. Thank you for the super chat. Who'll be favored in Athens if UT goes into it 7-2?
Oh, I still lean Georgia.
Yeah.
Playing on the road, and I'm sure that game will be on. Has it been announced if that game's under the lights yet? I would assume it is.
No, I think they're going to probably exercise that 6-day window because I think it's flexed for either like it's a weird flex too. It's like either flex for like 2:30 or 3 or like 5 or 7. So it's a weird window.
TBD. Thank you, Matthew. But just given the importance of home field advantage, have to give it to Georgia, though they've had some struggles of their own lately as well.
They look very beatable.
And we'll see what what hand signs we're dealing with Kirby Smart in that game as well. That's a pretty interesting
kind of sign language he's going to throw out there with this game.
Yeah, we're going to see Kirby Smart signaling touchdowns like this, right?
Man,
we'll give it to him.
I still, by the way, with that whole fiasco, like I think the SEC office or the officiating crews in the SEC are like, look, if there's anybody we can get away with like shortchanging, it's probably Auburn because nobody's going to feel bad for Hugh Freeze. So I don't know if those conversations were had, even though Auburn got hosed a couple of times in that Georgia game. Yep. But I mean, I'm not his biggest fan personally, But if there's one coach I trust to say, hey, for one game, can you get your team ready to play and ready to just sell out to go win a football game? Yeah, I probably trust Kirby Smart to do that more than any coach in the country.
Yeah, I would say so as well. I mean, I am of the opinion that this is a game that Texas, there's a chip on their shoulder, I feel like, with Georgia, just losing multiple straight and a very winnable SEC championship last year to Georgia. I think they'll play with a chip on their shoulder. I do think Georgia would be favored just because of the road aspect. But, I mean, I'm not completely bought out on Texas losing that game, depending on how the rest of the season goes.
And Georgia, again, they've looked mortal this year. You know, they've had some close calls. To your point, that Texas should come into that game with energy, with some passion, saying this team just whooped us twice last year. And that should drive them. On top of that, new insert to the offensive line, Nick Brooks from Georgia. So there's your get back. So we'll see what it looks like whenever they end up heading over to Athens. But right now, I would give Georgia probably a 3-point line right now, just playing at home.
I'll tell you what, too, Texas has a bye the week before the Georgia game. This better be, that needs to be like the best. We need to be talking about that game in terms of Sark's adjustments and how he managed it. We need to be talking about that game the same way we're talking about the OU game for Texas to win that game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a statement maker, especially being a game coming off of a bye, considering what happened the last time Texas came off a bye and had to go play on the road in the SEC. It did not end up great for Texas. Well, that's about all the time we have for this Tuesday Longhorn live stream. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Y'all make sure to tune in to Coffee and Football in the Morning for On Texas Football. I'm Amanda Atwell. That's CJ Vogel and Jeff Howell. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your night, and hook 'em horns.
Hook 'em.